Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. And here I am at the end of the week of sharing some various scriptures that I hope have been encouraging to you. I have one more for today, and I'd like to share it. It comes from the 90th Psalm. Just a couple of verses that are shared throughout this psalm. I won't read the whole thing. But let's start with the first verse and read the first two. Lord, through all the generations, you have been our home. Before the mountains were born, before you gave birth to the earth and the world, from the beginning to end, you are God. Well, let's stop there a second. The psalmist is acknowledging the presence of God from the beginning. And this God who made all of these things, earth, sky, wind, sea, whatever else, this God, it says, is our God. See, we're not making this thing, I'm not making this thing up. I know a lot of people don't believe in God, or at least believe him in for anything except to curse him. But that doesn't change the fact that he is God. And it says here, throughout all the generations, you have been our home. The psalmist is talking about how God has been with every generation throughout all of eternity. And that includes you and me. He really is. He's been there and he will be there. Why? Well, it says, because you are God. Now let's look at another verse. Let's look at verse 10. It says, 70 years are given to us. Some even live to 80. But even the best years are filled with pain and trouble. Well, I don't know how old you are. I'm working on the the getting towards 80 stuff. Oh, I know I don't look more over 25. Yeah, right. And I know a lot of people live into their 80s and 90s and are really active and productive. At least they are around here, maybe not where you live. I know when I was a kid, I used to think 40 was old. And then as I got a little older, I thought 60 was old. And then I started thinking, maybe 70 is old. And now I'm not so sure about that. You see, old is simply a description we give of the number of years that we've had. Now, the psalmist is saying here that we're given 70. Well, obviously, everybody isn't because some people die before then. And if the average lifespan in the US is 78 years, well, for everybody who's over 90, somebody's got to not make it to 70. That's just the way the averages in math work. But it goes on to say that God gives us a long life. Some of us longer than others. But he says, even the best years are filled with sorrow and pain and trouble. That's true. We live in a sinful world, and in a sinful world, bad things happen. And as the author of the book wrote, bad things happen to good people. It's not necessarily your fault. Now, it could be. I mean, if you're out there drinking and carrying on and loose with all of your morals and you get sick in your 40s from something awful, well, that lifestyle may have contributed to it. If all you do is eat fat and grease and stuff like that, and you get diabetes and have troubles early in life, well, maybe that's had something to do with it. But generally speaking, we live a pretty decent life. We try to mind our own business. We try to make the world a little bit better, but bad things still happen. And the scriptures tell us that. It's just an acknowledgement of how life is. If bad things are causing you pain. Okay, so everybody has that. That's not an excuse to be miserable and crawl into a bed and hide and talk evil about others. You know, if we let our sorrow and our pain decide who we are, most of us are in pretty big trouble. So if you're struggling with how awful things are, just say, okay, now let's look at the good stuff. And that brings us to the last of these verses I want to read. Verse 12 says, teach us to realize the brevity of life so that there's a purpose in it, so that we may grow in wisdom. What is wisdom? Well, I don't know the correct dictionary definition, but I'm going to use this one. Wisdom is knowing and doing the right thing. Let me say that again. Wisdom is knowing and doing the right thing. Now, what's the right thing? Well, the right thing is what God wants. And I hope that's your desire. If it isn't, well, why don't you take another look at it? I mean, you've lived your life. How's well that turned out for you? As they say, how's that working for you? Try it God's way. Teach us, Lord, that it's saying the brevity of life. We're not going to live forever. I'd like to tell you that I'm going to make it into my 90s and 100s, but there have been no Verberg men that's lived that long. That's just a fact. Now, maybe I'll break that mold, but I can't count on it. I can't count on anything but today. I've had a lot of todays. I should have added them up. I don't know how many there are. You figure it out. This coming Sunday, I'll be 73, multiplied by 365, and that's how many days I've been around here. You figure out how many days you've been around. And then ask yourself, have I gotten wisdom out of it? Do I know more about God now than when I started? Do I know more about doing the right thing? Whether I'm a businessman and treating customers, or whether I'm trying to be a neighbor, or whether I'm in healthcare and giving care. You know, there are a lot of people out there that are just irritating and aggravating, and they're hard to be around. But wisdom is knowing to do the right thing, even for the person you dislike the most. You see, you and I only have so many years to make a difference in this world. It'd be nice if you'd started, last week or several years ago. But if you didn't, okay, start today. Start today to do the right thing. Do what God wants you to do. To love and care for your neighbors, for yourself, and put your hand in His hand and walk through the rest of life together. Well, you have a great weekend. You got a couple of days to practice what I've said before I come back with another topic. I wish you a great time. If you have a need or a concern, let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. God bless you. Have a fantastic today and weekend. I'll talk to you again.